Good evening, everybody, and welcome to WeHi's 2025 Annual General Meeting. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jane Hemstritch, and I'm the President of WeHi. First and most importantly, I'd like to introduce Wurundjeri Elder Uncle Bill Nicholson, who will welcome us to his country. Uncle Bill.
Yes, thank you, Jane, and thank you to everyone behind your special gathering here today, your AGM, for allowing me to take a period of your time to conduct a welcome to country speech. A welcome to country has been a custom of this land. You could put numbers to it if you like. The latest sort of archaeological numbers that I've been told how long we've been here is around 65,000 years. I like to think of it more in a cultural perspective. Since people have been on this land, the want and need of people to engage with their neighbours, their extended family, their business associates, whatever it may be, created the formal ceremonial process, which we call Kanda Mnaji in our language, English obviously welcome to country, that allowed people to feel culturally safe to conduct their business on our land for generations. And it's a great sign of respect to incorporate a welcome when people gather on Wurundjeri land today. And keep that in mind because it's a real key aspect to feeling welcomed under Wurundjeri cultural protocols. Language. To me, language is something that generally I call our programming. It's how we express things, how we learn things. Our language was taken from us in 1863, and if anyone's ever been out in the beautiful Birrarung Valley, now known as the Yarra Valley, out towards Healesville there, at a place called Corranderk where my grandmother was born, our language was not allowed to be spoken. But it's not a lost language, it's a language in its rebuild, in revitalisation. I'd like to share a little with you this evening. So, Wiminjika, Gabamala Mungil, Banabun Yalambu Wurundjeri Bala, Niranat Bill Nicholson. I welcome you here for a reason and purpose. That's what Wiminjika translates to, and obviously that purpose is to conduct your AGM today. I greet you and good day from the Wurundjeri people. My name's Uncle Bill Nicholson. I stand here proud when I'm asked to represent my community. My story is not an easy, or my family story is not an easy story to find. I didn't learn anything about my story when I went to school. I learnt it when I left school. And that's thanks to my father, who opened the doors up for me and some of my immediate family to learn our story. And Dad's message to us was to share it with all people that come to our land, either visit, work or live on our country. I really believe by connecting with the Wurundjeri story, it really helps people connect on a really deep level to this land. And I'll express that shortly, what I mean. But we are the last mob left, as we say, and for those that haven't engaged with Aboriginal communities, it has nothing to do with organised crime, that word mob. It is the way we express our connections to our families and extended community. The sad part of that statement, though, is there were others. I won't go through them all, but I would like to acknowledge them, though, all the men, women and children that don't have family representation to this day, both in the local level and throughout the rest of Australia. I'd also like to extend my acknowledgement to community leaders here today, which no doubt there are many. From a cultural perspective, the great strength about leadership in our culture is the word humility, people that convey the voice of their community, even over their own wants and needs, and earning that right through their actions. Environmental leaders, I always have to bring this into my welcome to countries because when you meet Aboriginal people, we always talk about country, and the health of the land relates to our health, both now in the present and the future. And from a cultural perspective, so many identities that now live on Wurundjeri land, pretty much the whole world's represented in some form or another. I like people to feel culturally safe on our land, to share your stories, your identity, what's important to you, your knowledges, whatever you like to share, to feel culturally safe on Wurundjeri land. The more sharing that occurs, the more listening occurs, and the more listening is based on what in English we call mutual respect, but in language we call it Jindi Warabak Balak, which it builds a unity within the community based on that mutual respect. Wurundjeri culture was very inclusive, very sustainable, very knowledgeable, very responsible and very healthy That responsibility to both country and each other I like to share with people when I welcome people to the land, because those things are our future. The colonial past, it was tough. I could go through many aspects to it, but just a message from it. Let's try our very best as a progressive society, as an individual in life, learning through life. We do make mistakes. If we don't learn from them, we continue to make them. So let's learn from those past mistakes, which were based on racial discrimination. We don't want racial discrimination attitudes on our land, and I challenge everyone to try our very best to get rid of it once and for all. We can be real leaders in that if we take that responsibility on. The ceremony in itself had many aspects to it. A couple of key parts. There was safety and trust built within the symbolism. That was offering of water to our guests. There was a fire lit, obviously none up here today, but to create a smoke. If you consider fire a physical cleanser of the land, which was part of how we manage country, the smoke is a spiritual cleanser. We're a very spiritual culture, and we have a word for that. Murruk Balak, which is the spirit of people, and Murrabbiik, which is the spirit of the land. And to feel truly welcome to Wurundjeri land, the respect of the land, people and culture, that's our law. That's been the law of this land for thousands of years, which was never ceded. And like I said at the very start, thank you so much for inviting me here to do a welcome to country. It shows a great deal of respect. So I'd like to say on behalf of myself and my community and my ancestors, Waminjika Wurundjeri Bik, welcome Wurundjeri country to you all, and I hope you have a very successful AGM. So Nun Gudjin, thank you.
Thank you, Uncle Bill. I too would like to acknowledge that today we're meeting on the unceded land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We've been graciously welcomed here, and I would like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and recognise that we've got so much to learn, as Uncle Bill pointed out, from the oldest living generations of scientists, teachers, artists and engineers who used and cared for the land on which WEHI operates at Bundoora, Elizabeth Street, Kew and Parkville. Welcome to everybody joining us in person and online. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our past director, Professor Suzanne Corey, WEHI members, donors, bequesters, alumni, current and past members of the WEHI board and subcommittees, consumers, WEHI staff and students, and special guests. I acknowledge the presence of my fellow board members, Vice President Professor Sir John Saville, who is somewhere around here. There he is, yes. Professor Mark Cassidy, Pippa Connolly, Professor Shelley Dolan, Paul Donnelly, John Dyson, Murray MacDonald, our Honorary Treasurer, Jeff Roberts, Dr. Anjali Weller, and Kee Wong. Now, I've been advised that we have a quorum present in accordance with Clause 24 of the WEHI Constitution, dated the 19th of May 2022. The minutes of the 2024 Annual General Meeting held on the 16th of May have been circulated to members. We've reviewed the minutes at the board and they'll be signed by me as a true and correct record. Are there any questions from members in relation to the minutes? Institute members joining us online can submit questions online through Slido. Members in the auditorium, please raise your hands. Nobody ever questions the minutes. So as there are no questions or comments, I'll declare them accepted. It's now my pleasure to share my President's report and reflect on another excellent year at WEHI. Guided by a commitment to long-term success, the board and senior leadership have remained focused, as always, on strengthening WEHI both culturally, economically and environmentally, while ensuring a safe and productive research environment. The commencement of Professor Ken Smith as the 7th director in our 110-year history was a pivotal moment for the Institute. It's been a real pleasure welcoming Ken to WEHI and providing him and the leadership team with the support they need to achieve our vision for our research and discovery future. It's a testament to that exceptional team, and particularly to Professor Alan Cowman, through his roles as acting director and deputy director, that Ken has been able to hit the ground running so effectively. We're absolutely indebted to Alan for his considered and nurturing leadership over many years. It's a boon to WeHi and to science that while he has now stepped down as deputy director, he'll continue to drive impactful research at the Institute. Now, research that leads to transformative discoveries is a long-term endeavour that requires scientists to be bold and requires dedicated supporters to engage in the journey. And for this reason, we're deeply grateful to the Snow Medical Research Foundation for their support of the Snow Centre for Immune Health, which officially commenced operations in 2024, and also to the Colonial Foundation for the Colonial Foundation Diagnostics Centre announced last year. Both centres, which are in partnership with the Royal Melbourne Hospital, exemplify the long-term commitment needed to push the frontiers of our science. It was also personally rewarding to me to deepen my family's connection to WeHi in 2024 by kick-starting the Hemstritch Centre of Excellence of Pancreatic Cancer Research, a 10-year commitment. I'd like to take a moment now to pass on my sincere thanks to 3 members who departed our board last year. In 2024, we farewelled Carolyn Viney, who joined the board in 2016, Professor Christine Kilpatrick, who joined in 2017, and Professor Duncan Maskell, who joined in 2023. WeHi benefited greatly from their expertise and leadership. They've gone, but I'm now pleased to welcome to the board Professor Mark Cassidy, who is Deputy Vice-Chancellor Research at the University of Melbourne, and Angela Scandaraja, who is the Chair of Development Victoria. Mark Cassidy joins us as one of our 2 University of Melbourne directors, and we're very grateful to bring his experience in engineering and research, as well as innovative thinking, to the board. Angela Scandaraja has over 25 years' experience in real estate, including over 5 years as the CEO of Development Victoria and 13 years as a partner in commercial law. It's a privilege to bring her business acumen, risk and governance experience to WeHi. This evening, I'm also privileged to welcome 12 individuals who've made substantial contributions to the Institute as WeHi members. Our members include former board and committee members, former scientific and professional staff, scientific collaborators, and our long-standing and generous supporters. So welcome to our new WeHi members, Dr. Peter Adams, Professor Warren Alexander, Karen Chisholm, Dr. Stanley Chisholm, Carol Grigor, Philip Lay, Dr. Judith Slocum, Dr. Tim Thomas, Claire Vance, Robert Vance, Professor Anne Voss, and Alan Walker. Science is truly a team sport, and behind every breakthrough in the lab are dedicated staff across our campuses, partners and community supporters, and a network of wonderful donors. My sincere thanks on behalf of the board to everyone who nurtured our research in 2024. In 2025, we remain focused on ensuring that WeHi stays at the forefront of international science and advances health through innovative research. I'd now like to hand over to Professor Ken Smith to deliver his first director's report.
Thanks very much, Jane. So I've been here for 1 year and 1 month. I arrived and almost immediately came to this meeting last year. But fortunately, Alan Cowman did most of the talking. So I'd like to just reflect briefly on what's happened over that year. I turned up and was immediately excited by the energy, the ambition, and the collegiality of WeHi. And that enthusiasm hasn't changed over the course of the year. We've had a year where we've really been able to recommit to our dual purpose of understanding basic biology in humans and translating it to the benefit of society. But it's been a busy year. There's been changes in state and federal government situation. the United States, which has sort of been the peak body for science, if you like, for many years, has undergone upheavals. And that has led to a certain amount of uncertainty, which I think we're weathering well. I mean, the key thing that we've done is to reaffirm our principles, our commitment to diversity, our commitment to just being free to do the science we want without any pressure, and to try and encourage people working within WEHI that we stick to those principles. So what we're also doing, of course, is looking at that upheaval as an opportunity to recruit brilliant young scientists to WEHI, and I think you'll find over the next year some new faces will appear as a result of that. We're also refocusing the Institute with a view to increasing our excellence and ambition and efficiency. And that means that the team that have been working with me over the year have worked above and beyond the call of duty, because it's difficult reorganising a place that's already running well and that's been stable for a long time. So I'd like to thank them in particular. Jane mentioned Alan Cowman, who was deputy director in my first year, was incredibly helpful, as was Marnie and Santa acting as well alongside him. Cal, our COO, who's left for the CSIRO, is critical in that. And now we have a new leadership team who are performing admirably. Marnie stays on it. Tony Pappenfuss, James Murphy, and Andrew Roberts are all the new deputy directors. But together with the entire professional services team, including my new chief of staff, Sejal, they're doing a terrific job. The other thing that's made my life much easier has been the board. I mean, I think most people don't realise quite how much time the board put into their job. It's not just turning up to the odd meeting. There are all sorts of committees. They have serious legal responsibility. But most importantly, they're an intellectual resource that not only I can call on, but so can other members of the Institute. So they're a terrific group. They really help stabilise us and inform us and drive things forward. So Jane, thank you for keeping them in order, and thank them for their input. I'd also like to thank our major partners in the precinct, and in particular, we're reforming and rejuvenating our relationships with the Royal Melbourne Hospital, and Shelley Dolan's been critical in that. And we're also revisiting our relationship with the university to make sure it's optimally synergistic for both of us. And Mark Cassidy and his colleagues are critical in that process, which will be ongoing. And of course, I should thank my family, who made most of the sacrifice for me turning up here and have managed to establish themselves and thrive in this new and remarkably unhostile environment. So it's been a great year from an organisational perspective, but of course the key thing is that we're producing science. And so I'd just like to touch on 3 discoveries, but you'll hear more from Alyssa later on in more detail about some of those. So, for example, Peter Gibbs, Ollie Sieber and Tao Tan have published a landmark study showing that drug testing in organoid models can predict treatment response in severe bowel cancer with 90% accuracy. So that's the sort of finding that actually will translate into the clinic quickly and have impact in the short term. But we have to balance that in WEHI, and I think we balance it very well with more fundamental discoveries that will have impact in the longer term. So Jane Visvader, Jeff Lindeman, Rachel Joyce, and Rosa Pasquale have discovered that in cells with faulty BRCA2 genes, they've discovered the cells of origin of breast cancer in that context. So that suddenly gives us a target for therapeutic strategies, which will then be developed over subsequent years. And the third thing I thought I'd highlight is Holly Anderson's work in collaboration with the Max Planck Institute for Biochemistry in Germany, where she found that essentially by using a WEHI-developed fundamental mouse model, but informed by collaboration with clinicians, they've found a cure which has already been shown to be effective in a lethal skin disease, toxic epidermal necrolysis. So there's 3 different examples of the work we do, all of them either immediately saving lives or setting the foundations for longer-term achievement in translation. And I think that is the sort of stuff we need to keep doing, and I'm excited by the fact we're doing it. Of course, that sort of work is recognised in many ways, and I'd just like to highlight some award winners this year. David Commander was made a Fellow of the Royal Society, which is enormously prestigious. Jane Visvader and Jeff Lindeman won the Buchanan Prize of the Royal Society. Gordon Smith, the Eureka Prize for Excellence in Research Software. Misty Jenkins was made a Fellow of the Australian Academy of Technological Sciences and Engineering. And Alyssa Glukova, who you'll hear from in a second, was the sole Snow Fellow for Australia this year, which is quite an achievement. We've also had some organisational achievements, and Jane touched on a couple of those. Our partnership with Snow Medical has really thrived. We're now into our second year. Paul Lyons has been appointed as the CSO, and we've started recruiting patients. And that terrific collaboration, a long-term fundamental program that will improve our ability to treat people with a range of immune diseases, is well underway. And similarly, the Colonial Foundation has had its leadership appointed and is operating and already producing exciting results. Both of those things, collaborations between WEHI and the Royal Melbourne Hospital. The Business Development Office is driving translation forward through commercialisation. We had 4 spin-out companies in 2024, which is a remarkable achievement for an institution this size and something that can only grow. As an example of one of the outreach things that we do and educational things, the Deadly Science Pathways program had its second year last year. This is a program that brings in First Nations kids and gives them exposure to science. That's that photo there. It's my favourite photo of the year. That is what science can do to kids, and actually scientists know that even when they're quite old, sometimes it does it to them. They may not make the same facial expressions, but you have the same feelings sometimes looking at your data. So this is what it's all about. What we need to do, of course, to survive in what is a difficult financial environment is provide our scientists with the stability of funding and of employment they need to ask big questions. What we don't want is uncertainty to make people ask only small questions, because small questions have small answers. And that's where our philanthropic support comes in, because that enables us to have the stability of funding we need to support people who are ambitious, ask big questions, and answer them to the benefit of society. So I'd like to single out a couple of key donors, but the whole concept of philanthropy is central to WEHI because it gives us that stability and is critical for our success. So Jane's generosity, which she mentioned in her donations, is again setting up a substantial, lasting program to investigate an important disease. Gus Nossel and his family establishing the Gus Nossel Professorship of Immunology will underpin and lead our immunology program in the future. Pamela Galley's gift has enabled a number of labs in the past, focusing on a range of areas of importance in cancer and paediatrics. In the future, extending that to the impact of climate change on those conditions. So there's lots happening. It's due to this, in large part, to our supporters. So I'd like to thank them, to thank the staff and the students who've given me a terrific first year. And I must say, at the end of it, I'm even more optimistic than I was at the start of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken, for a wonderful presentation and for your leadership and drives to WEHI in just over a year ago. Now, the annual report for the year ending 31 December 2024 has been circulated to members, and hard copies are available for those who are attending in person. I'd like to call for any questions from WEHI members in relation to the annual report, or my report, or Ken's report, and I'll pause for a moment to allow members online to submit questions via Slido. So do we have any questions? Nobody ever asks any questions. I feel like a failure. I will now hand over to our Honorary Treasurer, Jeff Roberts. Oh, we've got one. We've got one. Hurrah!
Yes, Jane, I'd like to ask a question. I'm very interested in that comment about 4 spin-out companies. Now, I wonder if we could have a little more detail on that.
I'm sure we could, and because I can't remember the fine detail of it, I'll get Ken to answer that question.
So I can't remember all of the fine detail either. But I mean, and it's pretty technical, but I suppose one of the highlights was one of them was funded by a large grant from the MRFF and was called TurnerX and was actually opened by Mark Butler, the Minister of Health. And it's really quite substantial. The other three are early phase companies, all with drug targets in mind and all, I think, very exciting. And what I think we also should remember is that a lot of what is now driving our ability to spin those companies out is the support that we've put into the Business Development Office. So we have the 6610 program, which gives us our own capital fund to support promising ideas at an early stage to get them going. And we've invested in JUMA, Australia's first bioincubator, which is embedded in CSL, partners at the university and CSL. So we're developing an ecosystem here that allows these ideas to turn into products and to get to the clinic and to do a lot more of it in-house than we used to. We don't have to now sell our ideas off, but we can develop them and maintain an interest in them as they're going through these early phases. So I think it's exciting, but I also think that it is the beginning of an expanding ecosystem, and we'll see more of it. So, and I must say, give credit to the Business Development Office. Of all of the institutes in Australia, I think, lead the way in that area as a result of their effort and the foresight of the board and others in investing in it. So I didn't quite answer your question, did I? But I gave an answer anyway.
Any further questions that I won't be able to answer? If not, Jeff, you really are on now.
Thanks, Jane. Good afternoon, members and guests. I'm pleased to present the WeHi 2024 financial statements that were out the front. They include a lot of things, actually. The statement of financial position, statement of profit and loss, other comprehensive income, statement of cash flows, statement of changes in equity, and the report of the directors and of the auditor in respect of the 12 months ended 31st of December 2024. We had another net deficit for the financial year of 28 million, an improvement of 14 million on last year's deficit of 42 million. The improvement was substantially due to the commercialisation and sale of Ion Optics. That might be one of the four, Ken. So that was a big part of the improvement. Fundraising and grant income was very similar to last year, and expenditure increases were controlled to just under 2%. The deficit exists as expenditure on research and research support services exceed our income. Our expenditure and research activity is due to the increasing success of our scientists gaining new grant opportunities, which is a good thing. Unfortunately, many of these large grants do not fully fund the cost of doing medical research or the high levels of support and infrastructure required to be internationally competitive. This funding, which does not cover the full cost of research, remains a challenge for all medical research institutes, and we have a project in place to eliminate our operating deficit by 2027. WeHi's total operating revenue for the year was 178 million, which is sourced 41% from federal and state governments for research, 11% from other grants, 37% from investment and other income, and 11% from donations and bequests. WeHi's operating expenditure for the year was 221 million. Of this expenditure, 66% was for research, 12% was infrastructure and building related, 4% was for fundraising and business development, and the remaining 18% relates to professional services such as finance, HR, IT, legal and governance needed to support our research activities. Other non-operating income of 15 million included the income from the sale of Ion Optics. The deficit of 28 million was more than offset by strong investment markets, with unrealised profits on financial assets like equity and debt taken straight to the balance sheet of 54 million. So that resulted in an increase in our net assets of 26 million to 850 million, a very strong financial position for WeHi to continue to pursue its mission well into the future. We are very well supported by the financial community, and I'd like to acknowledge the contribution of Andrew Scott, Niall Lucas, Stephen Milburn-Pyle and Fiona Trafford-Walker, who voluntarily serve on our investment committee. I would also like to acknowledge JB Weir and specifically Curtis Reid and Adam Blennerhassett. Infrastructure funding is critical, particularly as research, as I've noted earlier, is not fully funded by incoming grants. In this context, we acknowledge the ongoing support of the Victorian and federal governments. As you can see, WeHi partners with a range of organisations, which means we are truly brighter together. As the Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee, I would like to express my appreciation to the members of this committee, including Pippa Connolly, Malcolm Broomhead and Jane Hemstridge, for their work on this important committee, which advises the board on the financial stewardship of this great organisation. WeHi's leadership group and the finance team, ably led by Al Brown, should also be recognised for their efforts in providing sound financial management of WeHi's resources. The external audit performed by Deloitte progressed smoothly and there are no matters of concern. Deloitte partner Sandy Lawson is here today and can answer any questions should there be any on the audit. WeHi members, are there any questions relating to the financial reports? Like Jane and Ken said, please submit any questions on Slido or raise your hand for any questions. Yes.
Someone unrelated question. When I was a practicing scientist at the Institute, a significant part of my funding came from the American National Institutes of Health. With the turbulent situation now, how exposed is the Institute to those problems and what's the backup?
My recollection from a question I asked this morning was that I think only $1 million of grant income came from the US last year. Is that right? Is that last year? That's right. So not very exposed, but again, it's likely with what's happening over there that it probably gives us opportunity to recruit people, but sort of funding from the US is not as good as it was or could be with the outlook of the new president. So $1 million is the short answer to your question.
And there is backup for those exposed, for the scientists.
I don't.
Yes, we haven't needed to yet, but yes.
We do have backup. We haven't needed to yet, Ken said so. No questions on Slido. Any other questions from the audience? Thank you. I'll pass back to you, Jane.
Well, that concludes the formal business of the AGM, and we'll now move to the next section of special presentations and award announcements. And for that, I'd like to welcome Ken back to the stage.
Thanks, Jane. I'd like to introduce Alyssa Glukova. Where is Alyssa? There. So as I mentioned, Alyssa's a laboratory head here in structural biology, but was the sole 2025 Snow Medical Fellow for Australia this year. Alyssa, do you want to come and tell us why?
Thank you, Ken. And it is my great honor today to tell you about what I've been doing for the last 5 years and what I will be doing next. All right, sorry. So today I will be telling you about visualizing molecules for cancer drug discovery. And as a basic scientist myself, I thought I'll start my presentation by telling you about structural biology. Structural biology looks at essentially extremely tiny levels of life. We're looking at molecules. So to give you a perspective of scale, it's something about 1/1,000,000th of a millimeter. So we're not looking at organs, not looking at cells, but we're looking at components of what those cells are made from. So proteins or their complexes. And some of the questions that we're trying to answer is how they work, what should we target therapeutically, where do drugs bind, or how can we design new drugs perhaps if you know the shapes of those molecules, maybe we can find pockets where they fit. or can we improve the drugs? There are multiple ways why one can do structural biology, but new and emerging method currently is cryo-electron microscopy. So what we do with this method is we take samples, which can be proteins or their complexes or something a bit more complex, and then we essentially put them in a very large microscope, very powerful microscope that can take images at an incredibly high magnification. So again, we're looking at something at the scale of about 1/1,000,000th of a millimeter. It's incredibly tiny. But then all we do is take photographs. So we can actually take photographs of molecules, and this is what's shown here. So those tiny blobs here, those are the actual molecules. And what we do is we take several thousands of those, and each one contains a couple hundred of molecules. And then we use computational methods to reconstruct a real-life image of those molecules that do various things within the cell. And this is incredibly powerful. So we can see something very small, for example, an enzyme, and then understand how, for example, drugs in clinical trials binding, or we can look at something a lot more complex. For example, a complex of multiple proteins that perform a specific function. And from all of this, we can understand what exactly they do, or how, again, we can target them therapeutically. So my specific research focused on Wnt signaling. So it's all signaling. So signaling obviously is important. That's how cell communicates with outside world. That's how we sense what's going on, and that's how we respond. So Wnt's are essentially the signals that cell senses, and then it decides whether it wants to divide, whether it wants to become a more specialized cell, or whether it wants to move. And this is very important for embryogenesis, so when we're trying to build many cells out of one, but also in adults, when in such process as healing of the wounds, or growth of our hair, or maintaining of the bone structure. And as you can imagine, if something goes wrong with this process, that can lead to many pathologies. And some of the most famous ones linked to Wnt signaling is cancer, where cells divide uncontrollably, or cancer metastasis, where cells move where they shouldn't be going. But so with all of this, so what exactly is Wnt signaling? How does it work, and what am I trying to study? So it all starts with the signal, which is, in our case, Wnt, that binds to those molecules that are located on the cell surface. And all of this leads to complex intracellular processes that involves many proteins, their complexes. And more than that, the process is even more complicated because there are many types of Wnt's, there are many types of these Wnt sensing molecules, and all of this leads to multiple cellular cascades that all intertwined, ultimately leading to those three easy decisions, whether to divide, to specialize, or to move. And so for the last 5 years, my lab's research focused on two specific aspects of this Wnt signaling. So I was looking at the enzyme that is important for activity of the Wnt, so this one, porcupine, or one type of those signaling complexes, with receptor called Frizzled with their G proteins. And so what I was trying to do is to use cryo-EM to look at how those molecules look like. So we're trying to image those signaling complexes, trying to understand how the signal gets inside the cells. I was imaging this enzyme and trying to understand how it binds to clinically relevant drugs, as well as trying to develop antibodies that can inhibit this pathway. And so all of this was supported as just general funding from the CSN Centenary Fellowship, as well as the estate of Akos and Marjorie Tallon. And so what I and many other labs have been doing for last few years, for many decades, is actually take those individual snapshots of different parts of Wnt signaling. So we were looking at individual enzymes, maybe some complexes, some domains, and how they, bits and pieces of how things fit together. But the complete picture is still missing. We still, you can see how many of these are still schematics. We don't know how exactly this works at the molecular level. So essentially, it is like looking at gears and at a pile of gears of the clocks without actually knowing how they fit together. And so for the next 5 to 8 years, with the generous funding from Snow Medical and HMRC, what I'm trying to do is take a more holistic approach, to actually look at those complexes as they are in cells. So without really deciding what my system is, but isolating them directly from cells and then understanding how they work and what we can do with them. And so, of course, what I want to do is first to understand how this works in normal states, but also more importantly, how does this process changes in pathologies. And specifically, I will be looking at colorectal and pancreatic cancers. So this work will be done in collaboration with Sieber and Butowski Lab, who are experts in colorectal and pancreatic cancers. So the reason I chose those two systems is because they're absolutely devastating diseases with very high mortality rates. And the survival is abysmal. So it's less than 15% for metastatic colorectal cancer, less than 13% for pancreatic cancers. And both of those cancers are heavily linked with mutations in Wnt pathways. So not only that, but there are multiple studies that shows that intervention in this Wnt signaling can be beneficial for the survival and for the treatment of those patients. And so what I want to do is to combine my expertise with structural biology to understand these systems at the molecular level and to understand what is different between the healthy state and the cancer-derived samples. Sorry, cancer patient-derived samples. So essentially what I will be doing it, again, looking at this complexes, looking at the entire signaling pathway and understand how they're different in different types of cancers. So what my vision is to understand the molecular structure of Wnt signaling to enable the development of precision therapies. And so this goes through three pillars, essentially. So I'm trying to understand the molecular structure, trying to answer the question of how are Wnt signaling complexes assembled in cells, then combine this with information from the patient-derived samples to understand how is Wnt signaling altered in cancer. And they'll ultimately take all of this information and bring it to drug discovery to develop the novel precision cancer therapies. And so what I want to say is watch this space, and thank you so much for your attention.
I'm not sure we have questions, but we could if there are any. There's one. You got to come back. I don't think anyone's quite ready with a microphone because this was unplanned. So you guys say.
Yes, ubiquitins sends 7 different messages. Is this somehow analogous to that, or is there any relationship to it?
Thank you for this question. So there are, of course, ubiquitin signals in Wnt signaling. So this is not directly what we're looking for right now, but it is involved. So we won't be looking at this structurally, but we will keep this in mind for making this complexes, for example. Not sure if I
think that's
yeah.
probably near enough. It's, it does get complicated, and Wnt is sort of, you've chosen a pretty difficult system to work in. I mean, Wnt sits in the middle of this complex unknown network.
That's why I chose it.
Exactly.
You said big questions.
Exactly.
Big questions.
Which exactly, that gets back to my point before. You've got to allow people to ask big questions. Okay, thank you very much, Alyssa. That was brilliant. So our next speaker is someone who you probably know because he's been around for a while, Drew Berry. Drew is perhaps the world's expert in communicating molecular function of the human body through animation and with his team. And he's going to give us another example of that. Drew, thank you.
I actually joined WeHi in 1995 when Gus Nossel was the director and Ken Smith was his PhD student. And I very much recognize that over 30 years, I have been greatly privileged to be here and to peek over the shoulder of so many great scientists here at WeHi, to hear them describe their work and to have my mind blown about all the incredible discoveries they're making. I think there is a notable number of very powerful couples who run labs here and do incredible discoveries, impactful discoveries, but also share a home life, which, you know, mad respect for that. I couldn't do that with my wife. But the couple I want to talk about today are Jeff Lindeman and Jane Visvader. I was attending one of their seminars last year, and they were describing how the BRCA1 or the breast cancer, BRCA1 and BRCA2 genes, or the proteins that the genes code for, and their involvement in how in DNA repair. And they sort of described in sort of a general terms, and I found it really quite fascinating. BRCA proteins are key activating switch for a process called homologous recombination, which is one of the main DNA repair mechanisms inside your cells. It's able to repair DNA damage without making errors. So I was inspired to investigate the role of BRCA proteins in homologous recombination and to find out what the molecular mechanism would look like. If you could see it in action, what would that look like? And the first step of developing any animations is to head to the literature, and this is what they call a review paper. It's sort of a state-of-the-art, where we're at, where the paper will describe all the different steps. So this is a figure from that paper, and it's the steps of homologous recombination from the top down to the bottom, beginning with damage at the top, and then proteins come in. So each of these blobs are representations of various molecules. And the second from the bottom there is where BRCA1 and BRCA2 come together. BRCA1's already there, and it recruits BRCA2. So if we just pull that one step out, what we do is we then, in my team, is we will then take that and reconstruct from all the data in the literature what this actually is, what's going on in this kind of a figure. I'll just show you a couple of examples of the data that goes into this, and then we'll play the animation. First step, so this is from BRCA1. This is a cryo-electron micrograph, the density map on the left-hand side showing DNA coiling around a nucleosome and how the BRCA1 through BARD1 is connected to the nucleosome. And BRCA1 then is a recruitment or recruits in BRCA2, which then enables at the top there the formation of this fiber to grow. Another form of cryo-EM data is absolutely golden for what we do, for reconstructing and working out what these structures look like. And this is looking at RAD51, which is this fiber that wraps around the single-strand DNA. And anyway, we access that data and bring it in. And this is an initial model for what the BRCA1, BRCA2 looks like. It's attached, they're attached to the double-strand DNA, but then also this transition to the single-strand DNA with a nuclear protein filament, which is that fibrous RAD51 forming that. So this is a model, an early model. Let's have a look at what this all looks like, reconstructed from all those forms of data. So I'm about to play the animation. It's called DNA break repair by homologous recombination. So homologous recombination is classic university level biology 101 education, also senior high school biology. I recall it from my studies a long time ago and completely not understanding what it really was about. So what my job is now is to translate that into, so you can see it in action. It is a deep dive into this topic. It is complicated. It's mind-boggling how our bodies do this mechanism, but there isn't a test at the end, so you can relax about that. And just to set you up for this, at particular stages of the cell cycle, of the life cycle of a cell, there are, at some stages, two identical copies of the DNA. And they're identical in genes and composition. One's a copy of the other, and this is homologous DNA. And so with that,
Drew, that's remarkable. Can I ask you a question? How do you do the sound effects?
Sound effects are very important, and actually color as well. It's part of the aesthetic to make this stuff come alive. And the difference with sound is when you have it in a classroom, you put sound effects like that, the kids just going, whoa, what? Oh, does it really sound like that? And all these great questions. So I'm fortunate, a friend of mine from university days, he used to be the musician who used to sleep on our couch in our shared household, is Frank Titas. He now does sound scores for many Australian films, including The Surfer with Nicolas Cage, which is just coming out, and he's a multi-Grammy winning artist now. So I hand over my silent animations to him, and he really knows, he puts it all together, the sound effects, and just makes it really come alive and really become engaging. So it is an aesthetic choice, but it's a storytelling device. But it really does work with all sorts of different kinds of audiences. So, yeah.
So it's magnificent, and it's illustrative, and it's a storytelling device. It's also an intellectual achievement. I mean, moving from that review article, and we all spend our lives staring at those things and trying to imagine how it might work, and we never really succeed. And pulling that together in a way like that is, makes science come alive. It's brilliant. So thank you, Drew. We're now getting on to the prize-giving part of the afternoon, which is always good fun, particularly if you won a prize. Unfortunately, the professional services team can't win prizes because they never have. But I thought I'd just mention two that I would, if I could give out prizes, they'd be equal first because of the amount of work they've had to do in the last few months as we go through our financial and professional reorganisation. So I'd like to give a completely unofficial, non-existent prize to Lindsay Karakiazakis and to Al Brown for running HR and finance between them. So thank you very much. So of course, I'll have to give out another non-existent prize next year to someone else. So, so what I'd like to do now is to hand over to Melissa. Where is Melissa? Who's in charge of education, and she's going to hand out, I think, 9 prizes in all. So, Melissa Call, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ken. It's really a pleasure to be here tonight to present awards to some of our youngest researchers that are about to join and are at the Institute. So the Metcalf Scholarship Fund is a fund that was established to support both young researchers and also to honour the beloved and esteemed Professor Don Metcalf, who sadly passed away in 2014. And these scholarships support outstanding undergraduate students who will get their first real taste of research here at the Institute, tackling important questions in cancer, immunology, infectious diseases, developmental disorders, and age-related conditions. I think they might have got their first taste of science here watching some of the presentations today. I think both Alyssa and Drew did a fantastic job of showing some of the work that's going on. Since 2014, we've had 60 passionate, motivated, bold young Metcalf scholars to train with our scientists here at the Institute. And tonight we're going to welcome 8 more. But before I announce the winners, I'd first like to thank all the people that have given generous donations in memory of Don and have made these awards both possible in the past as well as tonight and into the future. And so what I'll do is I'll welcome each scholar up to the stage to receive a commemorative medal individually. And so I'd like to welcome our first Metcalf scholar, Chloe Campbell. Our next winner is Oscar Dowd. Our next winner is Ashton Liu, who is absent tonight, but I've been told that Cindy Shen will pick up his award on his behalf. Our fourth winner is Antonio Magro. Our fifth winner is Mohammed Akif Mohammed Akram. We have Suki Wallace. Seventh, we have Elsie Yip. And lastly, we have Jiasheng Zhang. So congratulations to all of our Metcalfe scholars. And the last prize I have to award tonight is the Professor Lynn Corcoran PhD Prize, and this is for the best thesis that was conferred during 2024. This award was established in 2017 and honours Professor Lynn Corcoran and her tireless contributions to the development and education of our young scientists. And this year, I'm very pleased to announce that the winner of the Corcoran Prize is Dr. Stephanie Bader, of the Infection and Global Health Division for her thesis titled The Role of Programmed Cell Death and Inflammation in the Pathogenesis of SARS-CoV-2 Disease. And so I'd like to hand back to Ken now. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks very much. And congratulations to the winners. What's exciting about these awards is actually not so much what they've got them for, it's their predictive ability to tell us what they're going to do in the future. So what I'd love to do is have all you guys back in 10 years and tell us what you've been up to. And that's true of the next prize as well, really, which is for early career researchers, for pioneering research. This is the Burnett Prize. It's a really prestigious prize at WeHi Awards. If you want to see its predictive ability, head outside when you're over drinks and look at the list of winners on the board there and reflect on where they've got to since. So hopefully, Cavan Bennett will be on a similar trajectory. Cavan, congratulations on winning the Burnett Prize. Jane, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken, and congratulations to all the prize winners. That's amazing. And the wonderful WeHi TV presentation, which is always such a highlight. And Elisa, I wish I understood a fifth of what you said, but it sounded amazing. So congratulations for a wonderful presentation. That concludes our programme. Thank you to people in the auditorium and people online for joining us. For people who are here, we'll now move to the Tapestry Lounge for refreshments. And to our online audience, I'm sorry you miss out on the refreshments, and I hope that I'll see you in person soon. Good night.